in many ways, I myself and the community of monks here know Venerable Panyavuddho through his many fine qualities that he brought to this monastery before he arrived, when he came as a layman Michael. And in that way we feel as a community, and myself in particular, that we do know his family very well, because the qualities of character, the kindness, the patience and the goodness that he brought with him were expressions of the good qualities that his mother and father had instilled in him. So in many ways all of us here feel that we do know his mother and father through him, because it was through those excellent qualities we got to know your character as well, the qualities that you respect, the qualities that you uphold, and your philosophies on life were reflected in his personality in many ways. And you did such an excellent job in bringing up such a fine and wonderful young man. And in that sense, for all of us here, there isn't a sense of regret at his passing, because he was such a good person and a fine human being, that even though his time with us was short, it was a wonderful experience. And it was that wonderful experience that we have no regrets about, even though, of course, every one of us would wish for that experience to last longer. But because of the nature of things, it was just this length of time. It was still a wonderful experience.
Tanajanjaya, so you're someone who, when I think of Panyavuddho, actually I always think of you also, because you have this connection.
Yeah.
Goes back to your visit to Chicago in America. And
yeah, I mean, I was, I guess, somewhat surprised going to the States in the early 90s and just finding a young man of his age with that kind of moral seriousness, I would say, and taking precepts very, very seriously and trying to base his life on them, which, as you know, many people in the West are attracted to the meditative practices of Buddhism, but the sort of the whole package, including the devotion to precepts and sense restraint and so on, is obviously not so immediately attractive, especially to young people. But right from the start, he had an affinity for that, and more than anything else, that's the thing that, as a teacher or as a senior monk, you feel that that's a sign of someone who will go far. You get this feeling, this is someone who's, monk material.
Yeah.
They say, in the Buddhist text they use a different phrase. They say sons of good family, but you know how it is. We're sitting around. You say that new Pakao. I think he's going to make a good monk.
Yes,
and he was one of those.
Yeah,
you knew
yeah.
he's going to make a good monk.
Yeah.
Mike's a very intelligent person. We say even an intellectual person, but never up in his head in that way,
yeah.
and those virtues of kindness and consideration for others, and willingness to give up his own desires for the welfare of the community are always a very strong part of his personality, and something that, as senior monks, here's someone you can rely on. You've got a job needs doing, or some kind of responsibility, and that even if it's something that Panyavuddho would have never done before, if it needed to be done and the Ajahn asked him to do it, he'd do it, and as I say, give it his best shot. And he did have these real gifts, a real gift for teaching, which he showed from that time as this teaching through America. And I told you that he was still getting letters from his pupils after he came here, and he made a huge impression on these kids. But here, asking him to be guest master and speak to the newly arrived people, and he was just so good at that. He was a really good role model for the monks junior to him. And all you can say is it's just a great loss.
Yes.
Myself, the Sangha members and the lay community always remember him, that he was very happy to share his time with the young monks, the young anagarikas in training in white, and the lay visitors, always very keen to give them some time, encouragement in different ways, and very talented particularly in areas of teaching. He had a lot of knowledge. He'd studied widely, so he's very good at comparing the Buddhist traditions, the Zen tradition, Mahayana and Theravada tradition, our Thai Theravada tradition. Always full of anecdotes about the teachers. He has a very good memory for different stories and knowing how different teachers approached Buddhism and the way they taught, and that was very useful, particularly for newcomers. Very good at just giving them an overview of Buddhism and explaining the different traditions. He certainly inspired our local Catholic hermits. We have a hermit tradition in our area in Melbourne, and they come to visit us regularly. They're Catholic priests from the Benedictine tradition, and several occasions he went off with some of the other monks to visit them, to visit their larger monasteries and some of the smaller hermitages, and they were very happy with him. He had a very good rapport with them.
Yeah, he had a broad understanding of other traditions, basically, many different religious traditions.
which is very useful in the West, because in the West we're just one of many traditions, so that he's very good at bridging that.
He had an extraordinary mind, very kind of nourished by this kind of sense of intellectual debate. But he never seemed to hold. He was never somebody who would be holding to anything very strongly, very open. So he was always very good diplomat. You know, had a great sort of diplomatic skills, I found, within groups. You know, he wouldn't tend not to make sides, but open the area of investigation rather than try to close it into a particular point. So yes, it's I think he'll be greatly missed.
It's just quite obvious that he was really definitely pretty committed to this lifestyle and
sincere.
Very sincere. I think that's the thing. I think if you would have to say, sort of going through a list of say qualities, I think almost everyone would say very sincere. It's like kind of idealistic, and some people, they don't actually have the kind of in them to sort of realize their ideals or live up to them the whole time. But actually, he's somebody who, you really feel, generally he did. He was just had a very strong love of Sangha, which means a monastic Sangha, but of community. And when you're somebody who loves that, who loves people, then you're always, going to have that sense of sharedness.
Yeah, I think everyone says that his sincerity in practice and diligence and also intelligence in his understanding of Dhamma in everyday life. And generally, I think what we found between us common and certainly was, let's say, the interest in the teachings, in the suttas and various teachings, let's say more the intellectual side, but also with lots of faith in it. Faith brings the heartfelt side to whatever you hear and read.
I have a lot of confidence that people who live good lives end up in happy destinations, so I'm not particularly concerned for Tan Panya, but what strikes me mostly is a sense of his death being a terrible shame, because I think he was a very kind of a well-rounded monk, very good wisdom, very good intelligence, but also very committed to his formal practice. And I think that combination, I think that he would have been very inspiring, and he would have been able to give a lot of intelligent encouragement to a lot of people. So I feel that mostly as having been a terrible shame that he should have to check out so early. And, yet at the same time, it's like at least having died young, at the same time very competent, he lived a very good life.
Yeah.
So it's like it was a life of quality.
I would say he's someone that, when he has a really strong determination and strong principle, and he pretty much know where he's going. He's always careful, study, and and the first time after he meditate and met Ajahn Chayasaro in Chicago, and he said, I want to become a monk, and I thought he was joking. And later on, and when he was a monk, and he said, this is what he wanted to do, and at first I didn't think he was gonna become a monk this long, but obviously, this is his path. So I think he have a very complete life. He has a very good, well-loved family with good childhood and very good education with a lot of friends who loves him, and at the end, he got to spend some time giving back to community by teaching, and at the end he find his solitude and his path, toward peacefulness. So I would say he's one of few in the world, or that I know that live a complete life. You could have a person live 100 years, but if they don't spend their time wisely, but for Michael or Tan Panyavuddho, he spent this past few years beautifully. So even if he just have a few moments, I think he lived his full life. Even though right now I'm still shocked a little bit that he's gone, but I still believe that he's always, for me, he's always gonna be in my heart and remind me, as he always is, to be good and to be mindful. So I hope I gonna still keep him as a good side of me.
When we wish to go beyond suffering or realize Nibbana, then we must have faith in the practice. In truth, taking up this yellow robe isn't for seeking out wealth, respect, or praise. Rather, it's for the realization of Nibbana.